Steve, it's a big week. Yeah. You know why?
The July 4th holiday?
What that it happens on July 4th, that's for sure.
Oh, the hot dog
Oasis,
eating contest?
that I mean, sure, but Oasis getting back together, your favorite band?
Oh, yeah. Are they getting back together?
Yes, I have ticket. We talked about this. I have tickets to go see them in Toronto.
On
I won't
July the
brag about
4th?
it. No, there. That's we got to talk about that. It's the Monday before football season starts, so I've got to think through that a little bit. But
Oh,
other
that's
than that,
exciting. Yay,
yeah,
Oasis.
yeah, proud of you. Thank you. Other than that, it's also a big week because we have a great interview. We're doing a podcast. The name of the podcast is called Stuff Summer Says with
Steve.
He's doing wonderful per usual. He's wearing his orange.
Wonderful.
I will note, and I see it there today. Last week it was too hot. When it was too hot, he did not wear his orange quarter zip. He
It
wore his
wasn't.
orange
It wasn't.
t-shirt.
It wasn't Greg from Glasgow, but it was an orange adjacent color shirt to stick with the palette.
It's a good neutral color for this podcast.
That's what I thought.
Okay, podcast guest this week. I great get. Former Penn State athletic administrator and now commissioner of the SoCon, the Southern Conference, home to my Wofford Terriers, as we talked about a little bit. Mr. Michael Cross joins us. He was a great conversation about a little bit of everything that you kind of hopefully come to expect from us. I think we hit on primarily house stuff and primarily just kind of interested in knowing how he got to where he got to. And I thought he did a great job having a good conversation that I didn't feel overwhelmed by with us. Um, I think would be the best way to say that. So go ahead, take a listen to that interview. We'll be back after that. Yeah, we'll tease the other stuff on the other side. Steve, I can confidently say that there are two conferences that I know the most about. The first is, of course, the Big Ten and the SoCon, and I am not blowing smoke up the what of our guest today. The SoCon is probably number two because of my beloved Wofford Terriers
Get
and their
out of
best.
here.
So I am thrilled, excited to have the commissioner of the SoCon conference, Mr. Michael Cross. How are you today?
Good, Darian. How are you? And our office is located right across the street from Wofford, so we couldn't get any closer than
Perfect.
I am currently. So,
Perfect. Love my Terriers. They've become a niche basketball following because, Penn State basketball here or there is a little spotty, I will say. Um, Michael MC, as you were known in your Penn State days, I was spending some time looking at your LinkedIn, and I love the about section because I think this sums up who you are or good where I think this conversation can go. Your specialties include the role of intercollegiate athletics in higher education and the NCAA's rating percentage index. I think that shows how truly in love with um, academics and college athletics you are. But I want to know, why has this always been a career choice? Why is this something that you've wanted to pursue? Why get involved and go down this road?
well, going down the road wasn't always the plan. I mean, we're in an era right now where people, plan to major in, sports management. They want to pursue careers like this. I would describe myself as a gym rat who's found his way into administration, but it wasn't what I always envisioned doing. And really, what gave me the opportunity was my 5 years at Michigan. And as I was choosing graduate schools, I was looking at four different places. Michigan was where I wound up going. I actually looked at Penn State, and that was probably my other choice. But had an opportunity to work with Michigan football when I was at Michigan going into grad school, and was associated with that from an academic advising standpoint, and then from there started writing a lot of my research papers around these types of things, and found that it really got my juices flowing as it related to where I thought we should go and the role between intercollegiate athletics and higher education and how it was used, and it's turned into a really nice career. So I'm very fortunate.
Is it fair to say you're an academic of college athletics?
I'm going to say I'm a student of college athletics. You
Okay.
got to continue to
Okay.
learn about it every day. I'd like to. I do have a couple published journal articles and that type of thing, but I'm going to leave the academic piece for those who have the faculty title.
You were at Bradley, you were at Michigan, you were at Penn State, of course. When did you realize that, oh, I could go be a commissioner? When did that kind of come on your radar?
So when I left Penn State, probably about 2 days later, I was hired by the Knight Commission on Intercollegiate Athletics and was doing a lot of research and work with them. Knight Commission, for those who aren't aware, is a policy think tank related to issues in higher education surrounding intercollegiate athletics. Um, and really have a very strong values-based moral compass regarding what they want to see for the experience of student athletes, really focused on their health, education, safety, and success. And that was a strong attraction for the opportunity to work there. And while I was working there, I was approached by a search firm, and the opportunity presented itself that way. And got into the conversation, felt very good about where I was. I was working remotely and really liked what my situation was. But there was enough about the job posting, and they described in the job posting, they wanted, they used the words leader or leadership, 19 times or so. And they clearly were looking for some particular things related to where they wanted to go, what the future of college athletics might look like, and how the SoCon might fit into that. So got in the mix and ultimately emerged as a successful candidate, and have enjoyed it ever since. My 2-year anniversary, official 2-year anniversary, is actually tomorrow. So
Look at that. That's good. Michael, I'm curious. You used values and morals in one of your answers, and you talked about the leadership and where the SoCon wants to fit. We often talk about Penn State, right? And it's more fan based and maybe a little business based for as much as we're informed about it. What is the future of, and what is the niche that the SoCon and places like that have, and what is that future? Like from our side, from my side, Penn State is big business, right? Players are getting paid. It's a different animal than maybe before. How different is that animal with the schools you deal with, or isn't it? And what makes that work?
So there's a lot of ways I could answer this, Steve. Let me see
I
if
know
I
it
can.
wasn't a simply well formed question.
No,
But
it's
go for
okay.
it.
But there's a lot of pieces there. So what I would say is, first of all, I don't subscribe to the notion that Southern Conference institutions can't compete at the highest level, and I don't think any of our schools do either. There's no question there's a resource difference between what you see at the Power Four level in the Big Ten and the SEC, and we're obviously an SEC and ACC country. And there's significant resources that are put into the efforts on those campuses. We're putting significant resources into our competitiveness as well. Um, the challenge that nobody talks about, and it's what we do is different from business, is that if I own a Chick-fil-A restaurant and I open another one, I can grow my business. I can get more revenue, more profits, et cetera. If I open a third one, I can do the same thing again. I can steal business from other people. One of the challenges that exists in our business that nobody really talks very much about is that we're in a situation where we always have a winner and a loser. And so the extra resources that we are putting into our sports, there's no guarantee that you're going to see the results. And that's one of the great challenges. We are all going to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars more for the same results. And what do I mean by that? We're going to have one national champion. We're going to have one conference champion for each of our 32 conferences. And we're going to spend a lot of resources to try and continue to be competitive, to be invested, and get the significance of small differences in those games. I mean, if you're to put it in context, if you're a football coach and you have a 600 winning percentage, depending on where you coach and some of those circumstances, you're a Hall of Fame football coach for winning 60% of your games. Not to take anything away from the success of that accomplishment, but it shows you how challenging it is to try and be a national champion or be a conference champion, because you're going to have to win more than 60% of your games to achieve either of those two outcomes. And so you're continuing to pour resources in over and over and over. And I think that makes the world very, very complicated. That's the first thing. Second thing I would say is that I view much of what we do as similar to the Olympics. Okay. In the Olympics, you've got winter games, summer games, 100 plus countries, 75 plus sports, or maybe it's the other way around. But regardless, you got different geographic benefits. Some people are in the north and they've got snow. Some people are in the south and, they don't have snow, but they've got great weather for outdoor sports. And somehow we come together every 4 years with different NGBs, different budgets, different investments, and give out gold medals based on competitive success. And nobody bases that on who has the biggest budget. They base it on the results on the field or the court or the track or whatever it might be. So our challenge is the same thing. We need to do the same thing, do it in our way, do it in our level. And for our conference, we focus on a couple different things. One, we've got outstanding leadership as it relates to our presidents, our athletic directors, our coaches, and they understand the challenge of, sometimes needing to moneyball what we're doing in order to be competitively successful. And that's a very real factor for us. But their leadership understands what their resources are and the types of things they can do to be successful. They've got to identify places they want to be exceptionally good and then pursue that. Obviously, basketball championship access is crucial for us, as is access for all the championships. But March Madness is a big deal for us and for conferences like ours. From there, you got a couple other things. We continue to focus on the academic component. We've got strong academic institutions. Our host here with the Wofford connection will put, one of the 10. But it's a great environment to have an experience where you are not simply owned by your coaches. You can go in, you can study, you can pursue internships, you can have things that are supposed to be what the college experience is about, as opposed to every waking moment being about trying to earn your paycheck, which is where we're heading. There's no question about it. We may already be there. So it's a difference in that regard. And then the third thing that we really lean into is we're very focused on our competitiveness, and we're very focused on our regional footprint. So unlike many conferences, our footprint is among the tightest that we of any in the country. There's a couple that are a little smaller footprint, but none of our teams ever fly. They can go from door to door on the far corners of the conference in less than 8 hours easily, and probably under 7 or a little less, depending on if you can get through a couple major cities. And that makes a difference. It makes a difference in the athlete experience. It makes a difference in our cost structure, and it allows us to invest in places that really make a difference for our athletes and our performance. So continuing to lean into a Southern strategy, and one that I would describe as being very focused on being clearly the premier FCS conference in the Southeast, and arguably the premier FCS conference in the nation, is really where our focus and our thoughts are.
How does that, a lot of the things that you just listed out there, borderline almost could come from an athletic director, Moneyball and travel and competitiveness. How does a conference commissioner fit into that puzzle and be balanced about that, I guess, probably is part of your approach?
Yeah, so I don't know if my approach is different from other people or not. I mean, I've been in college athletics for 30 years, but I have been in a commissioner role for 2 years. So, most of my time, almost all of my time, has been on campuses. And so, unlike many people who get into these roles and they've come up through a conference office or maybe through the NCAA, that has not been my path. And so I would say, first and foremost, I always have my competitive hat on. I am, much like all 10 of our ADs and all of our coaches are trying to figure out what are the competitive advantages and opportunities that we can create for our conference membership in total that will allow us to go out and have maximal success when we go and compete against other conferences in our non-conference competition. That's the first thing. Second thing, as it relates to the conference itself, what are our responsibilities? One, provide a great championship experience. The experience of our athletes matter. The vast majority of student athletes at this level will never get to the NCAAs. As a single big conference, that's a reality, with a couple sport exceptions, FCS football being one of them. Most of our athletes are not going to have that competitive opportunity at the national level. So making sure our conference championships are exceptional is going to be the experience that they remember, and they appreciate, and should really matter to them. So we put a lot of effort and time and organization into that. We do have a philosophy where all of our conference members in all of our sports can go to the postseason in our conference championships. It's a bit unusual, but it's purposeful and intentional because of the types of things I just talked about. So that's a real factor for us. And then the other thing where we spend a lot of time on is probably two things. One is governance. We've got to govern ourselves and organize ourselves and have fairness and competition. And that's a role that we play in trying to determine who the qualifier is for the NCAA. And then finally, the last piece is, generate revenue. And there's a lot of ways we can do that through our conference championships, through our television contracts. The scope and scale is very, very different from what you're going to find in the Power Four. But all of those things matter. And if done well and done properly, we can provide an incredible experience for our athletes, for our coaches, and for our institutions. And ultimately, my goal is to make sure that, nobody ever wants to leave, and, that we're that attractive that other people say, geez, I'd like to be in the Southern Conference.
How do you prove? I don't know if prove yourself to membership is the right word, but you're 2 years in, build trust, build relationships. Like, what was that process like? Because not everybody was involved, I assume, in the interview process, or no one was getting you in that seat. So as you deal with schools and ADs and coaches, what is your approach to say, oh, I'm here and I'm here for the betterment of all of us?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when I think back to the interview process, I mean, there was a committee with 3 presidents, an AD, an SWA, and a faculty athletics representative. That was the first part of the process. And then from there, I had a interview with all 10 of the presidents of the conference. So, I report to the board, the council of presidents. They're my bosses, and that's the group that I have to be most aware of and aligned with as it relates to where they're trying to go and what they're trying to do. And presidents, as people in higher education will understand, have all kinds of factors that they're dealing with. So when they're making a decision, it is very rarely solely about athletics. What are the faculty going to say? How will the alumni perceive this? What's going to be the impact on the budget? What's the impact on the student athlete experience? What's the impact on the student experience? So there's a whole host of factors that they need to account for, and they do account for in their decision making. And I try to think very clearly and think through all of the possible angles that they're thinking about issues in order to try and move us forward. In terms of the relationship building, communication is a contact sport. And so when I started, I didn't get out of, I didn't do anything but travel through all 10 of our schools in my first probably 30 to 45 days. I spent a day or two on each campus, meeting with the president, meeting with the athletic instructors, meetings with the coaches, meeting with student athletes in every single case, meeting with the faculty rep, meeting with the SWAs, to make sure that I understood that specific institution's worldview, took a lot of notes, learned the second institution's worldview, learned the third institution's worldview. And we've got a unique situation where I've got 4 public institutions, 4 private institutions, and 2 military institutions. And so you'd spend a lot of time consensus building. Politics is the art of the possible. I try to figure out what is going to be possible to move us forward competitively, and make sure that we're going to provide that experience that we talk about. And really, revenue generation is big, athlete experience is big, and exposure for our institutions is big. And we try to check those boxes on all the decisions we make.
Yeah, I think the diversity of the schools really struck me, right, with the military institutions and the publics and privates. Do you get more calls or feedback that's, hey, we should try this? Let's do this, or hey, this is wrong. I got a complaint.
Well, I think I get both. It depends on the topic. So where does the grumbling come from? And this is a universal challenge. I want to be very respectful of this group, but fans are fans, and administrators have a lot of pressure on them, as do coaches. So where does that emerge? It's in officiating. People are always like, what about this call over here? How did this happen? And I've become aware of the dynamics on both sides of the equation. And the funny thing is, I think back to when I was on campus and I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's out to get us, and I can't believe she's calling games this way. And I'm in a situation now where I don't have that same internal bias and internal pressure. I simply hope for good outcomes in terms of officiating and no controversy. And if those are the outcomes, I feel pretty good about it. I really don't care who wins in our conference competition. And so, but that's a place where it emerges, and you're dealing with tricky things because people are fallible. Replay still isn't the solution for all things. And ultimately, you've got to try and figure out how to navigate these really important questions for people's livelihoods and careers and opportunities to go to postseason. So officiating is a place where you get some grumbling, if you will. But that's not unique to us by any stretch of the imagination. On the suggestion side, there's not any shortage of ideas. I think all of our people are trying to figure out how do we maintain our stature nationally? How do we maintain our relevance, in particular in the Southeast, and understand the landscape of the conferences around us and what the schools around us are doing? Because there's crossover. We're crossing over with the Big South. We're crossing over with the Atlantic Sun. We're crossing over with the Ohio Valley. We're crossing over, with the Sun Belt and some of those athletes. And so those types of factors for us are very real in our decision making. And you've got to be thoughtful in the decisions you're going to make. We don't have an endless budget. We've got limited resources. And so what are the things that are going to be difference making? And what are the sports in particular where we're going to focus? Basketball being one of them, obviously. The ability to be nationally competitive in FCS football is a real thing because we don't have to compete against the FBS unless we get a bye game from them. So that dynamic starts to guide us. And then from there, we've got other sports where we do well. We're the number 6 conference in the country this year in college baseball, for example. And, so we've got the opportunity because of some advantages we have where we feel like we can be competitive. We're not going to send 5 teams to the NCAA, but our representative, whether they're a regular season champion who becomes our conference postseason champion, or somebody who's a couple spots down the rung, is probably going to give somebody a really hard time. And I don't think people are very excited generally to see the Southern Conference show up in their facility.
What we say about my Wofford Terriers, they're tough. I want to know, what is something that is in the job description that you did not think was going to be in the job description when you took this role?
Wow, that's a good question. I think what I would say is I didn't realize the multifaceted nature of this. And what I mean by that is you become very attuned to different worldviews. There's a presidential view, there's an athletic director view, there's coach views, there's administrator views, there's faculty views, and then there's institutional views. And despite the fact that everybody seems to be going in the same direction in terms of what they want, there's hundreds of different ways to get there. And some people want to do it in a particular fashion. Other people want to wait. Some people want to do it. Some people are very oriented toward first mover status. Other people are much more content to say, hey, let's pump the brakes here. Let's see what everybody else does and then decide. This is played out for us in a lot of the settlement situation that's happening with the NCAA right now. So, our conference has gone from a stage where we were going to have 3 schools opting in and 7 were not, to 5 opting in and 5 were not, to, I think by the time we hit tomorrow, we may be as high as 7 opting in and 3 not. So people's decision making evolves over time. The campus pressures and the campus factors that inform those types of things are very real. And the ability to think on different levels and trying to put yourself in each person's shoes over and over and over about why are they saying this? Why are they thinking about this? That's been really interesting. When I'm at Penn State and I'm working with, Penn State hockey, that's a pretty straightforward model as it relates to what are you trying to do? You're trying to win a Big Ten title and go to the Frozen Four and win a national championship. Like, that's a very narrow lane versus doing that across 10 institutions, 100 plus, almost 200 teams. You got associate members who aren't even in the conference full time who come in men's soccer and rifle and wrestling. And, trying to balance all of those things and get to a place where you've got a vote that's 6-4 or more preferably 7-3, 8-2, 9-1, or 10-0 is really where you're spending a lot of your time, for sure.
Makes sense. How instrumental is the conference? Because I saw the statement from you guys from the conference itself about opting in and into the House settlement. How instrumental was the conference in swaying some of those later schools to opt in that you kind of laid out there?
Yeah, so I want to start by saying our conference approach to this has been to not mandate anything in particular. So we are not mandating that you must opt in or that you can't opt in. We left that right out of the gate as an institutional choice. The one place where we have spent a fair amount of time is talking about scholarship limitations, and we have established a bylaw related to taking the current NCAA limits, so 11.7 in baseball, 9.9 in soccer, 63 in FCS football, 13 in basketball, 15 in women's basketball, and applying those across the board as SoCon rules going forward. So those for next year will be our rules as it relates to scholarship allocations. So and it goes back to, in some ways, to what I said before about recognizing we're a single bid conference. We could all spend double money than we are currently, and we're probably going to wind up with a single bid. So do we really want to go down that path? So that piece of the equation has informed a lot of the dialogue from a very early stage. And we will find out what that means in terms of our competitiveness. I remain optimistic that we're going to be in a good spot because we've got a lot of other advantages, but time will tell. From there, I think the big thing as it relates to the schools is I didn't really try to sway anybody. My personal opinion is that there are more advantages to opting in than not. But if you're in an institution that has enrollment management factors and you're using athletics to help drive enrollment at your institution, you may think about that topic very differently. So you may feel like philosophically you're not there. So all of those types of things on both sides of the ledger, as I've talked to athletic directors and presidents about this, has been to listen to what they're talking about and then reinforce, here's the positives of the decisions you're making. Here's the things you've got to be aware of. Here's the unintended consequences of the choice you might make. And so on both sides of the equation, that factor absolutely exists. You're opting in, there are going to be unintended consequences. There's no question about it. It could be roster size, could be hidden costs that have yet to be disclosed by as part of the settlement that we have to factor into in terms of those who opt in. And if you're deciding not to opt in, hey, you can have an unlimited roster. That's great, but that third party NIL deal from your collective may not get approved by NIL Go. So constant education is really the approach here, not trying to push anybody in a particular direction, my own personal worldview aside. And I think hopefully people feel good about where they've wound up. And all of them could change next year. The 7 that opted in could change their mind and say, that was horrible, we're out. And the 3 who didn't could say, hey, we're in, and we want to try that model. So the decision you make this year doesn't lock you in for the future. And we'll see if people want to, try and kick tires in another direction after they go through it one time in their current state.
I want to know. Oh, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
Well, go ahead. Do you have another SoCon question?
I was going to go Penn State. So
I want to go to the single lane.
Okay.
That single lane job, right? When you're the sport administrator for hockey, I'm curious, what was it like to watch from afar this spring? And were you watching from afar? I mean, you're a busy guy. I got 10 schools to worry about. So were you paying attention to what happened on the run to the Frozen Four?
Very dialed in. So, I've known Coach Godowski for, back to the time when we hired him at Princeton. So I'm going to say, at least 20 years. It's been a while, maybe a little bit more. And I've known Jeff Campersall on the women's side, who also had a fantastic season this year for a similar amount of time. So, those relationships go back a really long time. I text with them. I'm here as a resource if they want to use me. Much like when I was a sport administrator there, I'm not giving guidance about the power play. I'm not talking about what to do on the field. Like that's not my lane. But if you're talking about, we talked about before, you referenced my LinkedIn bio that talks about, RPI expert. Like I continue to pay attention to this issue, not only for purposes of just general interest, but it's helpful to all my schools in the SoCon, and I can translate and apply those things to the pairwise and hockey. You get a whole host of different things. Maybe there's something that comes up that, coaches are trying to figure out how to navigate something. And again, I'm here as a resource, but, we have relationships that extend just beyond, the hockey piece. We text about music. We text about card playing. We text about a whole host of things. So, there's no shortage of topics. I'm not going to unveil all those here, but I watch very closely and very attentively both programs, and couldn't be happier for what they've put together on both sides of the ledger.
Love that. I love that. You mentioned decision-making processes and how important they are. I want to know, back to your Penn State days, the most important decision-making process. What was your go-to creamery ice cream flavor?
Oh gosh. Is there any other answer other than the peachy paterno? Isn't that what everybody's supposed to say? So that
He didn't ask you
It's
for
a
the
popular
politically
one.
correct answer.
It-
You
was
yeah,
really
answered.
what, and I would say too. There's anything that had like mocha or coffee flavor, and I don't know what the specific flavor is, but if it had the
those
word
are
coffee
all.
in it,
They're always all. It's those you've hit the general three of those would probably be the top three of our go-to answers on that question.
yeah. So I would say yeah, something. If the word coffee was on there, I'm probably all about it, and peach paterno is right up there too. So.
Awesome. Michael, what should we be paying attention to in the SoCon to kind of wrap up here as we enter a new calendar, a new fiscal calendar year
Yeah, I
within a
appreciate the
few
question.
hours?
We've got a lot of things coming. So we're in the negotiating window for our ESPN agreement. You know, we'll hopefully get that wrapped up sometime by the end of the summer, early fall. We are in our negotiating window with the city of Asheville regarding our basketball championship, and we're moving toward conclusion of that discussion and feel pretty good about where we are. Asheville's been our host now for I think, gosh, 12, 13 years, maybe longer at this point. Incredible host city for us, and they do a really fantastic job. You know, the ability to have all the hotels downtown, walk everywhere. I mean, it's a really special environment, and we're very thankful for that. You know, so those are two big pieces of the equation for us that'll come down the path very soon. We've got Football Media Day on July 22nd. We'll see if there's any interesting announcements that come out of that. But you know, those are probably the three big things coming down the path right now. And then we'll see the last pieces, you know, again in the policy wonk category. There's a lot of changes coming with NCAA governance. I've written pretty extensively about this and posted on it and my thoughts about what I think makes sense and what doesn't. But there's big changes coming to how the NCAA is run and governed that I don't think most people are dialed into or paying attention to. The biggest thing for us is that we continue to have championship access and that we've got revenue that comes from the NCAA. Those are very important things, and we've defended those well. And you know, I look forward to having dialogue with our other commissioner colleagues and people across the industry to figure out what's going to work best for college athletics, recognizing that there's a lot of different worldviews on that for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for
Thanks,
joining us,
Michael.
Michael. This was awesome.
Appreciate the opportunity, guys. Look forward to seeing you again down the road.
Yeah. Steve, I learned a lot there, and I learned it's funny that like the officiating was the biggest thing that he hears a lot about. I think that's funny. But I also learned kind of what I expected in terms of like how and where the commissioner role fits in and how important and I got this from our conversation, but a level-headedness and you have to have leadership in that role, but you also have to be accepting or welcoming to all parties and understanding all of those viewpoints. And I appreciated how diplomatic, I guess would be the best way to say we got that from Michael.
Yeah, that's a good word. When I worked with him, not with him, but did things with him at Penn State in a couple different roles, volunteer roles, some coverage of hockey kind of stuff. He always struck me as perhaps the smartest guy in the room who would never say it, and also one of the nicest guys. Like he's a thinker, he's level headed, he cares, and I think college's athletics is, as I told him, better that people like him are in it. So it was, and I feel like I'm feeling kind of southern, like that John T. Edge, who we had a year or so ago now. I was so geeked to have him. That time spent with MC was just great. Like I feel better about college athletics as a result. And I'm just glad he made time because he's a good dude. Like he finds solutions. He thinks about things. He's not that whole part about, well, what happens if this happens, right? Like there's consequences. There's like, he's actually thinking about that stuff. And sometimes I'm not sure people do. I mean, they should, but I'm glad he does.
No, it definitely felt the energy from that conversation was definitely a we energy as opposed to a me energy. And I don't know that there's necessarily maybe there is. There are a couple commissioners that I could feel that the wrong side of that energy from. But I think for particularly these smaller conferences, And yes, I know that we are a Penn State focused podcast, and it's like, why do we care about the SoCon? Well, you should care about the SoCon because this is all part of a delicate ecosystem that needs to kind of work and balance with each other so that people everywhere can enjoy college sports. And it's not just because Penn State has all this money, or not because X school doesn't have all of this money. And I think that's important.
And the strategy is still the same, right? He
Yeah.
talked about here's our scholarships. These are going to be our scholarships per sport, right? This is our plan for going forward. So everybody has a plan for going forward. He gave us kind of a look behind the curtain of theirs, and I appreciate it. And the things happen at Penn State and bigger schools. But it was just cool to hear it from a different perspective.
Yeah, here's that. Yeah, we do dabble in the southern part of the country occasionally. I don't know why.
Road trip to Wofford.
We can. That'd be great. Okay. Let's talk about the news of the week. You are fired up about something else. I am fired up about something. That is the order of the way this podcast will go. The news of the week will be hockey, and basketball. The fired up is about an article you sent me, and then I have become aware of. I'm experiencing a plague, an epidemic here in Maryland that I want to talk about and discuss and
it's not
clarify.
cicadas.
And it's not cicadas, although we do have some lantern flies that might be attacking our tree. It is not that, but it is.
Okay.
So
let's get the news. What's the news?
Okay, the news. A couple different things. I think the biggest thing of the week is Penn State, for the first time ever, has well, I guess really for the first time ever, multiple different ways. Its first season with first round picks in the NBA draft, the NHL draft, and now the NFL draft, and the NFL draft, but also all concurrently at the same time. I think it's a fascinating time to become a Penn Stater, a bizarre time to kind of become a Penn Stater. But I think let's start with the hockey aspect because that's what we talk about probably the most. That is Jackson Smith, the recruit from the WHL, going in the first round to the Columbus Blue Jackets. I begin with the point that it is very ironic that there is only one other city in America. Well, I guess there's two because of LA. But there's only one other city, I think, in America that has a Big Ten town and has a NHL team. And of course he goes to that one. And I thought that was quite enjoyable. No, I think this is a hallmark, high watermark for the program in a lot of ways. And I don't know. I think we'll get to the other name that people want to discuss in a little bit here too. But like, part of me just sitting here wondering again, like if they don't go to the Frozen Four, is this happening right now? If they don't go on the run that they went on starting back in January, that led them to the Frozen Four, is this happening right now? And I think this, again, is starting to change the way we talk about hockey at Penn State. It's starting to change the way we talk about the conversation there in terms of now Penn State is not only entering an era where it can win, it's entering an era where it's developing NHL talent, something it has not consistently done in the like 15-ish years, 12-ish years, now that it's been a Division I program. And I think that's pretty exciting. I think it's very cool to see Penn State have five in total draft picks.
Yep. And 3 on the roster last year and 5 draft picks.
Yeah.
This time.
Yeah.
So. Can I?
Go ahead.
I'm very excited.
Yeah.
I think it's great for them.
Peace, Steve.
Can you say they develop NHL talent if the number 1 pick hasn't ever laced up for them?
Well, dear friend of the podcast, Russ, asked a very good, important, and good question about this because a lot of people are a little confused because the NHL draft does not work about the same way the NFL draft does or the NBA draft was. The Blue Jackets drafted the rights to Jackson Smith. And that means that he's kind of still free to do whatever he wants. If he wants to go play in the NHL, he could, but that's probably not going to happen just based on the way that NHL teams operate. And so Penn State is likely, by all reports, actually, no, not likely, he has signed. So he's going to play at Penn State this season. They're going to have to develop him and help him develop. So yes, I do think they are entering their era in which they.
And I think Charlie Serrato, right, from the bits I saw, like gets credit for Penn State gets credit for him being here and getting picked where he did this year, and people saying things about him in the program after he's picked. So it was great for hockey. I mean, 5 guys in 1 draft. I mean, that's wonderful.
It's the most, I think. It's obviously it's the two earliest picks, I believe, because I think Serrato going, even though he went in the second round, I think he beat out some of the other guys. And I think that's important, and I think we have not talked about the Gavin McKenna thing on this podcast yet, just because I'm just trying to lay low, work some sources. Okay, I have sources. We have those here, people. I do think, I think that situation is not possible without the success that they had leading into. And I also think I'm going to give Pat Kraft some flowers here. I do think that this is Boston College Pat Kraft seeing and realizing what hockey could be and the potential it has, and opening up some of those NIL funds in that direction, and making sure that that program is supported in that direction. And I do think, based on people I've talked to, but also just the hunches, and I do think it is very possible that Gavin McKenna is playing at Pagula Ice Arena this year. Do I think it's going to happen? No, or do I think it's going to happen 100%? No, but I don't think anything's going to happen 100% for the most part. And I think there's a couple factors that could change, but I do feel comfortable in saying that Penn State appears to be the leader in the clubhouse. There was just reported this week that he was on campus, both at Penn State and at Michigan State. He's kind of taking some time to decide. I think it was in a Sportsnet article, a feature about him and his family that I read this weekend. But I think if he comes to Penn State, it's the biggest recruit in Penn State history. I think not just hockey, Penn State sports history.
Yeah, I'll go there. Well,
Yeah.
sure. I mean, because
it's a program changing commit.
Well, right, and I think in hockey, they're going to play right away, right? And you're going to be able to see them. It's not like the number one running back coming and the number one quarterback coming, you know. So who would be number two on that list?
I was thinking about this. That's a really good question, and I knew you were going to ask it.
I think mine is Hack. I mean, I know you were going to go there, but I think mine is Hack. Just for coming through the tough times, sticking around, and starting right away.
Yes, I think that's the stability he provided, and we can throw AB in there too, because he was equally as big of a star level recruit. Right. I think the difference with Gavin McKenna is, and I know hockey is somewhat niche and somewhat of an insular world compared to football for sure, but like it's going to put an unprecedented amount of attention on Guy Gadowski's team if he comes.
Yeah.
I think would be the best way to say that. So we'll see what happens, and it seems like he's still got a decision to make. But yeah, I think the eyeball emojis are warranted.
Good for them. It's exciting. Exciting
time. Yannick Conan Niederhauser also goes in the first round of the NBA draft. Interesting fun fact about that. I don't know if you saw this. He's not the highest ever Penn State draft pick in the NBA draft. Jesse Arnell went 13th, but that's in the second round of his draft. So I think that was kind of interesting. Fascinating, right? Like it's like kind of weird for the year that Penn State basketball had, for where the program kind of feels like it's going back to have one of its best ever draft picks. It's the highest ever draft pick, so to speak, at least in the modern era. And it would be nice if they could find ways to cash in on it. And I'm anxious that if they can find ways to cash in on it moving forward in terms of success.
Where is the program going back to?
I feel like the program has not gained any traction after where it was in the second year of the Micah Shrewsbury era, and might be going back to.
So you're not optimistic about the UN mix of the fish that saved Pittsburgh?
No.
Okay, just checking.
No, but I'll still tune in because I'm a glutton for punishment. You know.
Maybe they'll be great.
Wow, that was some optimism.
Heartfelt. Yeah, I know. Okay. We'll see.
Okay. We cover the draft. Anything else you want to discuss draft-wise?
I mean, it's a great number, right? It's a great stat to be able to throw out there. Football, basketball, and hockey. It's great for them, and I'm happy that that's the case. So I think enjoy it, embrace it, and see what happens next.
Yeah, sweet. And I want to know what I haven't looked up yet. I'm sure there's a way. I want to know. Obviously, it happened with Michigan this year. They had the same run of a NFL, NBA, and NHL. I want to know how many times in the past that has happened, because it can't be that many. Um, between
No, and
the
it's probably Michigan that it happened at, right? Like, I mean,
yeah,
there's like three
Michigan,
schools that it happened at.
Wisconsin, maybe,
Yeah.
but yeah. Um, so yeah, pretty cool. Okay. Glad we talked about that. You sent me an article that's been sitting in the old email inbox that you are fired up about. Fired up about? Is it? You are
I
annoyed?
just, I don't
Go
know.
ahead.
What was the title? Was the
The title
25?
is the title. It's from Chris Lowe on ESPN.com, and it's an interesting one. It's
It was a good
college
article.
college football's 10 unbreakable records.
Right. And I'm
And go
not
ahead.
always the blue and white Penn State guy. Oh, people aren't paying attention to us. They aren't giving us our props. But if you're looking at college football's 10 unbreakable records, it would seem that Joe Paterno's 409 wins, all at the same institution, would be on that list. Like, that's just not going to be. There's no other coach that's going to win 409 games at his institute, at one institution during his. It's just not. It's not going to happen.
It's a pretty black or white issue for me there. Like, I agree with that one, and I think I it when you sent me this, and I was surprised that it was not on here. Let's see. So here's what's on here: Oklahoma's 47 game winning streak. Yes, I don't think that's ever going to happen again. Barry Sanders' yards records. Florida State's top 5 finishes. How many was it? It was every AP poll for basically 14 seasons in a row. Um, there was some stuff about the wishbone offense. John Reeves not throwing that many interceptions. Derek Thomas's sacks. And Antonio Perkins won on kick returning. Marcus Allen, Pat Mahomes, and just some of the numbers he put up. And then the last one is no upsetting Saban. And this refers to his 100 consecutive wins against unranked foes. I think that one could actually happen. Comparatively, when we think about like the coaching records, right? Like, I feel as though, and I agree with you, that I think the biggest thing that is holding people back is, and James Franklin talks about this, is the fact that coaches don't stay places longer for one reason or another. Whether it's getting fired, whether it's just them having the appetite to go chase money elsewhere. For the fact that it's harder to win in college athletics, particularly at the Paterno-esque level of a Big Ten for the quarter of his career, or a little bit more than a quarter of his career. I guess probably about 40% of his career. Yeah, I think I agree with you on that it was very surprising, and I get it, and I do think some of that has been tarnished by the scandal and everything, and the sanctions, because for a while there it was 298 wins or whatever it was. But at the same time, like, I think you're right. Like, I don't think that there's going to be another college football coach that coaches that long because of how intense
Right.
the college football game is. That was the main reason why Saban retired.
Yeah, like it felt like it didn't make the list because there was going to be pushback, right? Somebody was going to be snide on social media. Somebody was going to say something in the comments, blah, 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 blah. And you just didn't use it. And that's okay. I understand that decision. I think if you're making a list of records like that, that one's clearly there, right? It would be like, oh, here's baseball's biggest record, and we're not going to put in Cal Ripken's playing streak. Like, it just, maybe those aren't exactly equal, but
Oh, but they are.
they aren't totally unequal either.
Because I think the biggest thing that feels like me is like the longevity era, right? Like James Franklin is, I think, the second most tenured Big Ten coach now, right, behind Kirk Ferentz.
Right, yeah.
And he has to be up there in the top 5 in the
Well,
country.
and you could frame it that way too. You forget the sanction stuff. It's about a person who stayed at a place that long, and you're not going to see that again because college football isn't going to be that again. And that's an easy include. So I was just surprised. Like, I don't know that I was super fired up, but I was just like, oh, that seems obvious. And it's not like it's some coach at some small school that you're forgetting, right? Like, it's clearly, it was clearly there in the conscious. That's all.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Okay. Anything else? Anything else you're fired up about this week? Anything?
No, I am waiting to hear about the epidemic.
Okay. All right. So, and I think this is maybe a Maryland specific thing, and I think it might relate to a law. I don't know. I hope this opens up a broader conversation. But so we live in a neighborhood that across the street from that neighborhood is a Wise grocery store. Um, there is a traffic light, and I pulled up to the traffic light, and there is a car in front of me. The light is red. On that car, there are several bumper stickers, and this is where the epidemic begins. That said either rookie driver or learning how to drive or student driver on them. Light is red, turns green. I'm the second car in line. One Mississippi, two Mississippi, three Mississippi,
You're
four
getting ready to rush the
Mississippi.
quarterback.
Honk the horn, feel like an asshole because I had to honk the horn to a student driver. You drive through the intersection, then you make a right to get into the Wise, and then you make like another left. And when this person makes another left, do I discover that this person is not a 16 to 17 to 20-year-old person, but rather someone that could not have been younger than you, Steve Samsel. And I think there is this epidemic in the state of Maryland, and everybody else from the state of Maryland is listening can agree or disagree with me. There are a lot of cars here that first and foremost, and I want to check because I didn't have one, that have all of these bumper stickers that say student driver, rookie driver, I'm new at this, like all of this. And then there are all of these people that are bad drivers that are taking advantage of the fact they have these stickers on their cars. And it is an epidemic.
I
It's
didn't know where you
bad.
were going with. I'm like, this poor immigrant person learning to drive, poor old person
No,
who couldn't drive because their family couldn't afford a car. Not that. You're just like,
No.
people are gaming the system
I think so.
by like, okay,
And so first question, number one, did the Samsel daughters have those on their
I
cars?
don't think those things existed when people were your age,
Okay.
right? Like, there was a
Do you
student
notice
driver
them
from the
up
school
there?
district. There was a student driver from this every once in a while, but I just assume as you do, right? It's somebody young who's learning to drive, or up here it could be an international student at the university,
Sure.
right? But the ones who have the nicest cars at international students at universities,
They don't put them on.
they don't put them on because they just bought the nicest car in the world and they're going to drive it.
Yeah.
I noticed them. I'll probably notice them all day tomorrow now that you've said that. But I didn't think about them gaming the system. So you really think old guy was game? Maybe the old guy was driving his granddaughter's car.
They weren't like.
Oh
Pink
wait. Oh, so
things
what's going to be the
dangling on.
stereotypical thing on the granddaughter's car you're going to say about?
Like
Nice.
there wasn't like a Hello Kitty sticker on it or something like that. I just we did not have those. Like back in my day, like I did not have those. I wanted to make sure that.
No.
But what I think it is, and I have not done research on this, which, as any great podcast knows, I do all my own research.
Yeah. From what I drove and what I saw, so that's
Yeah,
it's an audience
exactly.
of one, a big sample size.
Yeah, huge sample size. I feel like Maryland has some sort of law that, and like we didn't even have the other thing that there are a lot of near us are driving schools because like we took I don't know about the
Driver's
Samsel
ed.
children, but we took driver's ed,
Yep.
and I didn't actually have to drive a car in driver's ed. You could do that. Yeah, you didn't have to drive a car. Did you have to drive?
The kids drove a car. I drove a car 35, 40, whatever, 40, 50 years ago at this point. No, 40.
Okay.
Yeah, 50. I don't know, years ago. And
Okay.
the girls drove a car. They had a little lot outside of State High that you practiced on before you went to the DMV.
Oh no, like with the driving instructor,
Yeah.
like with the teacher.
Yeah.
No, in Altoona you could do that on like a voluntary basis, and then like get it would cheapen your insurance.
Yeah, right.
Like
Because you did
insurance.
past driver's ed, you got cheaper, right? So maybe
Right.
that's why they did it. Or maybe, who knows, maybe it wasn't all that involved and I wasn't paying attention. They're like, yeah, we're going to driver's ed class. And they were just blowing off school driving somewhere, which is possible. If they're listening this long in the podcast, it's been 15 years. You can go ahead and tell me.
We will do some investigative reporting on that. No, but yeah, I didn't have to.
Yeah, I think maybe it was for insurance. Maybe it wasn't a class. Maybe
Okay.
you took driver's ed and you got a
Mhm.
reduction on your insurance. We took it years before that because we had to. I think I had to. I don't know. I don't know why I wouldn't. I didn't
Yeah,
remember doing
yeah.
it a lot because we were driving in the middle of nowhere. Like it was like, oh, when you're 16, because those are the rules that were different for us. Like as soon as you were 16, you get your license and drive,
Right.
as opposed to like 6 months and nobody with you. Like when I got my license, my mom was, oh, thank God, take your brother here, do this, do that, pick this stuff up, you know. So, and I was like, yep, sure, that's great.
No. Anyways, All right. Well, I'm just fired up
Epidemic. I
about
will
this.
watch for signs of the epidemic when I drive up here in the next couple
I,
days.
and I'm telling you, next time you come down this way, like next time you go visit Sam
Yeah.
in Virginia, I bet there's a ton in Virginia too, because I just know that I have got
Not
feeling
rookie drivers. They're people who are cheating the system.
it's both. It's both the rookie driver stickers and then the people who are abusing the power and privilege of the rookie driver sticker.
Okay.
All right. That's this week's podcast. Here we'll get some feedback on the rookie driver situation.
If they stuck with us that long, maybe we will.
I hope they did. That was fun. Thank you to Michael Cross for joining us. That was a great conversation. I'm happy. Thank you for hooking that up, Steve. Appreciate you bringing. Hopefully you enjoyed that. We enjoyed having that conversation. I wrote about Roar Plus, which we didn't talk about, but I mean we talked about it again last week, but we didn't. I changed my feelings on Roar Plus just a little bit, but I'm no longer donating to Happy Valley United. I just want to make that clear and known to everyone. And now it's going to Roar Plus because that's where people tell me to donate my money, and I get a little bit more benefit out of it. No discredit to the Happy Valley United people. So wrote about that. I know I said we would do this last week, but we are hopefully going to do this like superstitions. Want to hear about those? I think that would be fun. Anything from you this week? Any plans?
I should probably do something since the boss isn't here. I got time to write. So let me see what I pull out of my hat.
Okay. All right. Eager. Always, he'll be fired about something.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. The name of that website, or the website address of that website, is stuffsummersays.com. On that website, you can find a section called With Steve. We have email. Mine's Darian at stuffsummersays.com. Steve's is
Steve at stuffsummersays.com.
Perfect. 5 stars, thumbs up. Appreciate all of that. Lastly, you can find me on the internet at Stuff Summer Says. You can find Steve
at Steve Samsel.
See ya. Bye.